sponsored by Squarespace. In this video, we're going to art hell. Long ago, the brave and close-minded and valiant authorities of the art community wrote in law the 3 shading sins. 3 terrible blunders which all artists must be wary of, because should you stray off the path of doing the TikTok comments verified method for having good art, you'll spiral into madness and be plunged into a mental peril from which there's no escape. So today, we're gonna be hitting a fat combo and committing all of them, because if there's one thing I hate more than TikTok, it's TikTok comments. Let's get sinning. Shading sin number 1. Black shading. The art laws state under no circumstances at all should you use pure black to shade. Applying it solid is evil, but blending with it, straight up demonic. Do not do this. I repeat, do not do. I decided that it would be fun to render a drawing of Shadow because, you know, I'm doing the shading and his name is, yeah, you get it. But also I chose to reference the scene in the Sonic 3 movie where he's sitting on the moon in space. Space is one of the few places you can get away with black shading, arguably, because really, there's not a lot of color being reflected from the character's surroundings onto them, and the light that is illuminating the character doesn't necessarily have to lean towards a warmer or cooler tone depending where the character is. To make the process a little easier on myself, I made sure to put my black color on a separate layer, and I used a subtractive method to shade. So like shading the whole thing and then subtracting the light areas. There were points in this piece that I was panicking a little bit because it looked kind of yucky. I was thinking that I dug myself too deep, and that by the end I was gonna show off the artwork and be like, yeah, I did this for the video, it looks good, right guys? And then secretly think it looked like trash. But to be honest, the final piece, it gets the message across. I do feel like it's missing the usual sauce, but black shading, it's possible. Shading sin 2, airbrush shading. Also known as pillow shading, it can leave your artworks feeling bloated and lifeless. This type of shading just doesn't communicate the form properly, which is why it's a shading sin, and you must never, ever, under no circumstances ever. I was excited to work with Airbrush after black shading because it now meant that I could use whichever color I wanted. The idea I had to make this airbrush work for me was to apply a layer of a more saturated color first. In my normal art, I like to put a little line between the shaded and lit areas. It makes everything a little bit more vibrant. Then now on the airbrush canvas, I'd go over the saturated color with the actual color I wanted for the shading, so I'd have the similar effect that's in my usual art. I felt really smart doing this, but I admit the airbrush was kinda hard to control. Even using the lasso and magic wand tool to select areas, I found myself somehow ending up with blotches of color I didn't really intend to create. I also tried to get a little fancy with the fur, but it ended up looking kinda bad. However, I really like how the shading on the quills turned out. They look very round and voluminous. I will probably never shade in this style again, but the final artwork, again, not bad. Now for our next shading sin. Hello? Can't you see I'm in the middle of something? Yeah, I know it's a phone call and you can't see me. Come on, I meant it figuratively. Squarespace is an all-in-one, packed with features, gotta catch 'em all website hosting platform. Great for artists. I use Squarespace to host my online portfolio when applying to markets. It's super easy to build a site because of Squarespace's simple integrated design tools. And also, if you're looking to sell your art goods online, you can use their integrated e-commerce to make that happen. The possibilities are really endless. If you are interested in hosting your own professional space on the web, look no further. Head to squarespace.com/Zeppin1 for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, use my code Zeppin1 to save 10% off a site or domain. You're welcome. Back to sinning. Purple multiply shading, or multiply shading in general, is one of the most insidious shading sins of all. In fact, it is even recommended sometimes as a tip. How deceiving! Should you use this shading method, your artworks will surely have colors looking a little muddled, as the shading does not match the color of the light source. Thus, you should never, ever, even if hell freezes over, never do. Here's my idea. that thing I was on about with the muddled colors, it's not going to be a problem if the background is purple too and the light hitting the character is purple. This sin is usually suggested as a tip because it adds a pop of vibrancy to the shading and it looks good with a lot of colors. But when it comes to lighter colors, it gets really obvious really fast what you're doing. Everything gets too purple, which is why I decided to add this purple nebula in the background. Something about drawing this felt so tacky and nostalgic, like this was about to go straight to tumblr.com. But you know what, there's a little charm in that. I think out of all the sins, this artwork was the one I liked the least. I was committing to using one searing shade of purple, and I felt like I just couldn't escape its wrath no matter what I did. And those are the 3 shading sins. Committed. Boom. And they look alright, I guess. Maybe in the end, these laws are there for a reason. And maybe there are concrete rules which define what looks good in an artwork. I mean, that's why people go to university to study art. They need to learn these rules. And possibly I should study them for my own self-betterment instead of being a belligerent loser on the internet and maybe get a real job. Nah! Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next video, and a special thank you to my beautiful, splendid Narps, Grubs, and Germs, and also thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Watch this video as well if you want. I look a little weird in it, but that's okay. Bye!